Okay, so today we're going deep on something a lot of our listeners have been asking about.
Yeah.
U.S Taiwan relations.
It's a big one.
It is a big one.
Yeah.
And, we always get a ton of questions anytime anything happens in the Taiwan Strait. But
Of course.
this time, it's even more interesting because we had this election,
Yeah.
the reelected U.S. president. Well, he's known for some pretty strong statements.
Definitely not shying away from controversy.
Yeah, and this time he's really stirring the pot by talking about Taiwan paying a protection fee to the U.S. So that's what our deep dive is about today.
Love it.
Basically trying to break down what's going on. What does the president mean by protection fee?
Right.
Is he serious about this, or is it just, political theater?
Yeah. Is he actually going to send an invoice?
Exactly. And then what are Taiwan's options, even if they're not thrilled with this whole situation?
Yeah. What are their options?
So with all that said, I am super excited to dive into this with you because you know better than anyone.
Well, let's unpack it.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. This idea of a protection fee in international relations. What is that all about?
So, yeah, it's a pretty loaded term, right? Historically, it basically meant weaker states paying stronger ones for protection, either military protection or just to avoid being attacked.
Like a mob boss situation.
Yeah, kind of like that. You pay up and the big guy keeps you safe, or at least doesn't cause you trouble.
So how does that apply to the U.S. and Taiwan today? Because they're not exactly, a small defenseless nation needing protection from bandits.
Right. Well, think of it like this. Okay. You live in a neighborhood where security is a concern. Maybe there have been break-ins or something.
I've seen enough episodes of Law & Order to get it.
Right. So you could try to protect yourself, maybe install an alarm system, learn some self-defense.
Yeah.
But you could also pay for a security service. They patrol the neighborhood, keep an eye on things.
And give you peace of mind.
Exactly. And maybe it's not ideal. Maybe you feel like you're giving in to fear or that you should be able to handle it yourself.
But it's an option.
It's an option. And for some people, it feels like the safest option.
So is that what the U.S. president is proposing for Taiwan? Like, hey, we'll keep the Chinese military off your back, but it'll cost you.
Well, it's not quite that simple. And that's where the ambiguity of diplomacy comes in.
Okay, so less like a straightforward bill, more like a strongly worded suggestion.
Maybe. Yeah. We have to remember that in international relations, leaders often use language strategically. Sometimes they're intentionally vague to leave room for interpretation.
So they can backtrack later.
Exactly. Or to send different messages to different audiences.
So what messages could he be sending with this protection fee talk?
Well, one interpretation is that he's trying to pressure Taiwan to take on more responsibility for its own defense.
Which honestly makes sense given all the recent military exercises China's been doing near the Strait.
Right. They've really been ramping up the pressure. And this could be the U.S. president's way of saying, look, we're here for you, but you need to step up your game, too.
But it could also be a way to look tough on China domestically.
Absolutely playing to his base. He's always been tough on China, on trade, on security. So this could be seen as a continuation of that stance.
But he's also been known to make some pretty bold statements that don't always translate into actual policy.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely got a flair for the dramatic.
So how seriously should we take this protection fee talk?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
It's hard to say for sure, but if we look at his track record on foreign policy and trade, he definitely tends to prioritize economic deals, and he's not afraid to use strong-arm tactics to get what he wants.
So is he trying to strong-arm Taiwan into some kind of trade deal, or maybe getting them to increase their military spending?
It's possible. Maybe he sees this as a way to leverage concessions from Taiwan.
But isn't that kind of risky?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what if Taiwan calls his bluff?
Well, then things could get pretty tense,
And who would feel that tension the most?
Taiwan, for sure. They're in a really delicate position. They rely heavily on U.S. support to deter any potential threats from China, especially when it comes to things like advanced weapons systems and intelligence sharing.
Right, because China has been pretty clear about their intentions towards Taiwan.
Yeah, they see it as a breakaway province that needs to be reunified with the mainland, and they haven't ruled out the use of force to achieve that.
So Taiwan needs the U.S., but they also highly value their own independence, right?
Absolutely. They want to make their own decisions, chart their own course without undue influence from any other country, and that's what we mean by autonomy.
So it's a balancing act.
A very delicate balancing act.
So what are their options here if the U.S. is pushing for this protection fee? They can't just ignore it, can they?
No, they can't ignore it, but they do have a few different ways they could respond.
Like what?
Well, one option is to engage in negotiations with the U.S. president, try to find some common ground, maybe offer compromises on areas like trade or defense cooperation.
So like a give and take.
Exactly. They could say, look, we're willing to increase our defense spending, but we need more support from you in terms of technology transfer or intelligence sharing.
Okay, what else could they do?
Another option is to double down on strengthening their own military capabilities.
Basically make themselves a less appealing target.
Exactly. Invest in more sophisticated missile defense systems, expand their submarine fleet, things like that.
So make it more costly for China to even consider an invasion.
Right. The idea is to deter aggression by making the potential costs too high.
But wouldn't that also risk escalating tensions with China?
It could, and that's the dilemma Taiwan faces. Every move they make has potential risks and downsides.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It really is.
So bringing it back to our listeners' questions, what's the bottom line here? What does all of this mean?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that this is a very fluid situation. The president's words have definitely created uncertainty, and it's still too early to predict the long-term consequences with any certainty.
So we're in wait-and-see mode.
Yeah, exactly. But what's clear is that U.S. Taiwan relations are at a critical point. The decisions made by both sides in the coming weeks and months will have ripple effects across the globe.
So this protection fee talk could have major implications.
Absolutely. It has the potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape in the region.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
I think our listeners will have a much deeper understanding of what's at stake. But before we wrap up, one last thought.
Yeah.
How might all of this impact U.S.-China relations, and what role could other countries play in shaping the outcome?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, something to think about
Definitely.
as we finish our deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.